On her 10th birthday, she pointed at the maid. What followed was incredible and life-changing. 10-year-old Emily Johnson stood in the opulent living room of her family's estate, her birthday party lively with laughter and colorful balloons. Yet, her sparkling blue eyes were drawn away from the celebration to where Maria, the family maid, was quietly preparing appetizers in the kitchen. On an impulse, Emily's voice rang out, bold and innocent. "She deserves a birthday party just like mine." The laughter faded into an awkward silence, and curious gazes shifted between Emily's defiance and Maria's surprised look. Emily's heart raced as the moment morphed into a thickening tension. In an instant, she had turned her birthday celebration into a moral battlefield. Her family, guardians of age-old traditions and unspoken hierarchies, now hovered like vultures around an unexpected dilemma. What if they acknowledged Maria's humanity? Would it mean dismantling the invisible walls that defined their world? Emily felt a rise of anxiety and determination crashing within her small frame. Why did it feel so right to demand fairness, yet so wrong to threaten the social structures she had learned to accept? She could see the flicker of embarrassment on Maria's face mixed with something braver, a yearning perhaps, that mirrored Emily's own desires. In that moment, Emily experienced a push and pull between innocence and insight, a child grasping at the strings of life while not fully comprehending the weight they bore. She hesitated, processing her parents' tight-lipped expressions and the heat of their silent reprimands. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The silence that stretched felt like an eternity, and Emily could hear her heart thudding as she courageously asked, "Why can't Maria celebrate too? It's not fair." Her words hung heavy, colliding with the well-manicured social fabric of her life. With every pause, her conviction battled with palpable dread. What if her parents snapped back at her? What if laughter turned to disapproval? She clenched her fists, the tension thrumming between her unyielding spirit and the unacknowledged reality that separated her from Maria. The room felt small, suffocating, as she leaned closer to Maria, whose expression held a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. What had she unknowingly asked for? As she stared into Maria's dark eyes, a flood of questions crashed in, igniting the internal storm brewing inside. Could they even bridge the gulf that lay between them? With each passing second, doubts festered and the starkness of class disparities pressed heavier on Emily's young shoulders. And then in the brewing silence, a determination surged. They had much to learn from one another, and perhaps, just perhaps, a flicker of hope burned within Maria's heart. With dreams unexpressed and an unyielding need for validation, could they challenge a world intent on keeping them apart? A wall of anguish encased their budding connection, and as Emily sensed the distance and fear closing in, she knew this moment would unfurl into something profound and irreversible. How far would she go to right this wrong? And could their reluctant bond ignite a change that would alter both their lives forever? Emily's heart thumped wildly in her chest as she anticipated her parents' response. They exchanged furtive glances, confusion knitted into their brows. The air was charged with an expectation that felt both electric and surreal, leaving Emily teetering on the edge of her resolve. From the corner of her eye, she caught Maria attempting to mask her surprise with a polite smile, yet Emily could see the deepening flush on her cheeks. The subtle acknowledgement of her presence took root within Emily, sparking an unfamiliar sense of responsibility. What had she begun? Not a moment later, her mother's voice broke through the tension, dripping with a polished facade. "Emily, sweetie, this is not appropriate. Maria is here to help us," she stated, her tone firm yet laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. "What does that mean?" Emily replied, her voice rising with indignation. "She deserves a party. It's not fair that we get to celebrate while she has to work." A bead of sweat trickled down Maria's temple as her eyes widened, caught off guard by this unexpected confrontation. The room around them felt suffocating, but Emily stood resolute, her back straightening even as the weight of family expectations hung heavily over her. Her father's voice sliced through the tension, more authoritative. "Emily, that's enough. We need to respect the roles we all play. Each word reiterated the unyielding boundaries within their household unspoken class divisions, reinforced by years of unset traditions and social protocol. Roles? She countered, feeling an unfamiliar fire ignite within her. Her role shouldn't mean she can't have fun too. Just because enough. His voice was curt, shutting down her plea with a finality that momentarily dimmed her resolve. Emily's hands curled into fists at her sides. In that moment, the childish innocence she had clung to began unraveling, transforming into an awakening. She was confronted with the reality of power dynamics, stark and unforgiving. Could she truly redefine these roles? The question echoed in her mind, intertwining with confusion and an emerging sense of justice. What propelled her further was an unsettling realization of the privilege woven into her identity, an awakening she was not entirely prepared to confront. That night, the frustration gnawed at her. As she lay in bed, the warm glow of the moon filtered through her window, and an idea began to crystallize. She envisioned Maria smiling, surrounded by friends and laughter in a celebration that recognized her humanity, her hard work made visible and valued. A flicker of determination washed over her as she slowly began to craft a plan. The birthday party might be a mere day away, but that did not deter her. Emily envisioned not just a gathering, but a statement and opportunity to bridge the gap that had long lingered between them. She glanced at the small mirror above her dresser and whispered, "What if you made an impact?" This question lingered, pushing all her doubts to the back of her mind. Could she truly bring Maria into this world of extravagance? Not merely as a maid but as a cherished guest? The thought propelled Emily from her bed, the remnants of childhood fantasy melting away as she stepped into the shoes of a burgeoning changemaker. With renewed fervor, she began to draft invitations, envisioning smiles blossoming in their shared space. But in her gut, a question swirled dark and tormenting. What would her family say when they saw what she had started to hatch? The morning light would arrive with its own promises, but first, she had to challenge that very light filter through the shadows that loomed ever so closely. The game was on, but would she play it wisely? As she lay her head back on the pillow, determination knotted with anxiety, she was on the brink of crafting her own fate. And yet, deep within her, a new realization struck. The true challenge lay in navigating the world around her without losing herself. Would she find her voice in that chaos? The stakes were higher than she had imagined, but Emily was committed. In the face of silence, it was time to make an extraordinary noise. What she didn't yet know was how this noise could possibly reverberate through her life, and that of Maria's in ways she could never have anticipated. As dawn broke, the soft hues of morning light crept into Emily's room, illuminating the carefully crafted invitations scattered across her desk. She stared at them, each one a tiny manifesto of her resolve. No longer would Maria be relegated to the background. This day would signify more than just a birthday. It would challenge the constraints of their positions. Wrinkles of doubt still marred her enthusiasm, but she brushed them away, longing instead to cradle the certainty that her actions could create ripples of change. Thoughts ricocheted in Emily's mind like pinballs of light and shadow. Every scenario of her family's potential reactions played out. Would they condemn her for trying to blur the lines they had so firmly drawn? Or would a sense of ludicrousness take over, reducing her ambitions to nothing more than a child's flight of fancy? The tension of foreboding hung like fog in her chest, but her determination defied it, stoking a fire within her that urged her forward. The kitchen buzzed with morning activity as Emily entered, greeted by the clattering of utensils against porcelain and her mother's habitual commands. Her parents' voices blended into a rhythmic drone as they discussed meticulously planned meals and lavish preparations. "Emily dear, the decorations need to be perfect. Remember, the neighbors will see." Her mother's eyes flickered over her like a hawk, scrutinizing but missing the undercurrent of resistance brewing within Emily. "Yes, Mom." The words slipped out with a mechanical cadence that belied her internal chaos. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the inevitable confrontation. As her mother continued to detail their expectations, Emily's gaze shifted to the corner of the room where Maria stood, her hands busy with breakfast preparations. Here was someone who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, invisible but omnipresent. Just then a thought ignited within her. This was a chance to elevate both their lives, if only for a day. "Actually, I want to invite Maria to the party." The words spilled out before Emily could quell them. Instant silence enveloped the kitchen. The cacophony of breakfast faded into a tremor of shock. Her mother's features contorted, a mix of astonishment and outrage. That's absurd, Emily. Maria is not one of your friends. But she deserves to celebrate too. She works so hard for us every day. The eruption of anger felt foreign, yet liberating as it rushed to her tongue, tasting of urgency and newfound conviction. Well, it's not done that way, and you know it, her father interjected, a stern edge cutting through his voice. The weight of his authority crashed over her like a wave threatening to drag her back under. Why not? Why can't I share this day with someone who matters? Each pause hung heavily between them, each heartbeat drumming out the dual nature of her conflict. Did she genuinely care for Maria? Or was this an impulsive outburst made due to adolescent rebellion? Emily's heart raced as she wrestled with those self-doubts, challenging the very essence of her upbringing. The pang of uncertainty morphed into something deeper, a voice that dared to demand justice where none had existed before. Maria looked on, her expression inscrutable. Was it confusion? Surprise? Emily couldn't decipher it, but the weight behind her gaze ignited a sense of urgency in Emily. What if the decision to include Maria not only validated her work, but also created a connection they both desperately needed? What if the party was just the beginning? I can make this happen, I know I can, she murmured to herself as her parents' discord faded into the background. A new strategy formed in her mind, a plan of subtle persuasion that would solidify her vision. She would approach this like a negotiation, employing her burgeoning skills to advocate not just for Maria, but for her own identity as well. In her silence, another realization loomed: this wasn't merely about a celebration. It was about grappling with privilege, about redefining her very place in the narrative that her family built around her. As the day wore on, Emily resolved to approach her parents again, armed with her well-formed arguments and the unyielding hope that this day could indeed change the course of their lives. But one question lingered, haunting her thoughts like the shadows of uncertainty. Would she have the courage to face them down again? The clock was ticking, the echoes fading, but the fight was just beginning, a prelude to something much greater than that day's celebration. Would they recognize her as the catalyst she aspired to be? The stage was set, but the real performance lay ahead. Emily's heart drummed against her ribcage as she stood in her room, grappling with the enormity of her earlier outburst. The cool morning air felt heavy with anticipation, and she was met with the soft whispers of doubt nudging at the edges of her resolve. Today wasn't just about Maria. It was about crafting a narrative where both their lives intersected, and the stark reality of her family's expectations loomed like a storm cloud overhead. The invitation spread across her desk seemed to pulse with potential, and she picked one up, inspecting the elegant lettering that now felt inadequate. This wasn't simple decorum. It represented a heartfelt challenge. Did elegance matter when faced with authenticity? Suddenly, the burden of crafting the perfect celebration felt trivial compared to the depth of her mission. With newfound determination, she slid her phone from her pocket, the weight of its promise both exhilarating and terrifying. Each swipe and tap felt like a step toward a new frontier. Clouding her vision was the image of her parents' shocked faces, and in that instant, she understood that change wouldn't come easily. She needed a strategy, an approach that would blend her desires with their comfort zone to bridge the gap. The plan unfurled in her mind as she paced the confines of her room, her resolve solidifying with every step. Why not turn the day into an occasion that showcased not just her parents' values, but her own values of fairness, connection, and gratitude? They held the resources and the authority, but she could wield the voice that represented something deeper. She recalled her parents' fondness for storytelling, how they retold family anecdotes rich with elaborate plots and moral lessons. What if she framed her invitation to Maria as a pivotal character in a story? As the day unfolded, she would structure it to allow her parents to observe Maria, to appreciate her contributions through a narrative lens rather than seeing her as the help. Emily paused, recognizing that her vision needed to appeal to her parents' inherent need for social propriety, while subverting it ever so gently. She could craft a celebratory tone. It could be a family gathering that acknowledged the efforts of every individual, including Maria. Her breath quickened, excitement pulling her forward. The invitations could double in significance. Not merely a social obligation but a declaration of interdependence, where Maria's presence would signify an acknowledgement of shared sacrifices. If the story was compelling enough, perhaps it would sweep them along, unaware of the deeper currents guiding her intention. Every character deserves a voice, she murmured to herself, feeling a rhythm building inside her, pulsing with purpose. But just as she began constructing her narrative framework, a familiar sensation settled in, fear coiling around her thoughts. What if her parents dismissed her efforts outright? Would they reject her attempts to divert the spotlight to someone they deemed inferior? Would they recognize her as the storyteller she longed to be? Or would they relegate her to the role of a child seeking attention? In that moment of doubt, she envisioned Maria in the kitchen, her gentle laugh drifting through the walls, a reminder of the humanity surrounding their household's dynamics. Emily steeled herself, channeling that image into courage. She knew she could challenge tradition. She only needed to transform fear into motivation. Revisiting her narrative plan, Emily realized that she had the power not only to invite Maria into the moment, but to reshape her entire family's perception of their roles. As her confidence mounted, the pulse of urgency tightened around the conversation she prepared to have with her parents, urging her to confront them once again. With each heart-pounding minute, the importance of her convictions crystallized. The tumultuous mix of fear and determination propelled her forward. She moved toward the door, her footsteps steady, committing herself to confront the unknown. But just as she reached for the handle, new question emerged, one that sent a tremor of dread down her spine. What if, in challenging them, she lost hold of everything she truly knew? What if, in her fight for justice, she fractured the delicate balance that upheld her family? The tension settled around her, lifting her resolve higher, setting the stage for a confrontation she'd been preparing for. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Would the strength of her narrative shatter the expectations of her upbringing, or was she about to unravel everything she held dear? Emily's hand trembled as she gripped the doorknob, her heart racing. The threshold between her room and the quiet corridor felt monumental. She took a deep breath, clearing her mind of the swirling doubts, visualizing the moment as an act of courage. Each step towards her parents would be a step towards transforming a well-structured narrative into a lived experience. Pushing the door open, she stepped into the hallway. The faint aroma of brewing coffee greeted her, intertwining with the sound of her parents' voices drifting from the kitchen. As she approached, she caught snippets of their conversation, an effortless dance of familiarity she longed to disrupt. The tension brewing within her coiled tighter, thick as the air she prepared to challenge. "Mom, Dad." Emily's voice faltered as she entered the kitchen, the familiarity of the space suddenly feeling constricting. Her parents paused, their expressions shifting from casual interest to focused attention. "Emily, sweetheart." Her mother smiled gently, though Emily noticed a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Everything all right?" She swallowed hard. "I'd like to talk about the invitations for the celebration," her father interjected, the authoritative tone he often employed slipping seamlessly into their dialogue. "We've got everything sorted, Em. Just a small family gathering, right?" "Actually, it's more than that," she clarified, summoning the conviction that had taken root moments earlier. "I want to make sure everyone important to me feels acknowledged, especially Maria." The reaction was immediate and palpable. Her mother's brow furrowed, while her father's shoulders tightened as though bracing for a storm. "Maria is well, Emily, you know she's the maid," her father stated, his voice measured but firm. The words sounded innocuous, but they struck at Emily with ferocity, reigniting the fear she thought she had subdued. "Exactly, and she deserves to be part of the family celebration, not just as someone who works for us, but as who she is," Emily rushed to explain, her heart thudding against her chest. This was the defining moment. A heavy silence ensued, punctuated by the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Her father glanced at her mother, and they exchanged a look that made Emily's stomach twist. This was a reaction she feared most, the silent agreement to dismiss her pleas as childish idealism. "What do you mean, Emily?" Her mother spoke at last, her tone more probing than accusatory. "Maria has her own life. She wouldn't want to intrude on our tradition." "Maybe you're right," Emily admitted, though the consideration tasted bitter. She could feel the weight of their expectations sinking in. "But does that mean we shouldn't invite her? Doesn't that just reinforce the idea that her only purpose is to serve us?" Her parents glanced at each other again, Two perfectly synchronized like a practiced duet. The stakes had been raised, and for the first time, Emily detected a hint of uncertainty in their expressions, a crack in the facade she might just exploit. It's not just about her, Mom. It's about all of us, how we relate, how we value the people around us. It's about showing love, not just obligation. She tried to contain the desperation in her voice but felt it slipping. Her father remained silent, the wheels turning in his mind, while her mother's gaze softened slightly. Emily leaned into the moment, sensing that the conversation teetered on the edge of an authentic breakthrough. "I've thought a lot about this," she implored, her tone steadier. "What if we frame this as a family lore? A tribute to everyone's contributions? A real story?" And there it was, the heart of her proposal fluttering into existence. Would they see it as a profound gesture of respect or a futile plea from a young woman still yearning for validation? Still, the path remained laden with obstacles. Emily sensed fear creeping back into her thoughts. What if she had misjudged her parents' willingness to adapt? A sudden swell of doubt crashed over her, but she steeled herself, unwilling to retreat. "Please," she said softly, the weight of her request filling the air. "Consider it." As the silence descended upon them once more, Emily's heart raced anew, the fight igniting a fresh spark of determination within her. Would this be the moment that shifted the tide in her favor? Or would it only deepen the chasm between her desires and her family's expectations? And then, before her parents could respond, she wondered, would this confrontation not merely be about Maria, but pave the way for Emily's own evolution as a storyteller and advocate? A new venture awaited, one laced with uncertainty and potential. Something deep within her whispered that change was on the horizon. But one question lingered. Would she emerge from this confrontation as the architect of her own narrative? Or would she once again be consigned to silence, trapped in a story that refused to change? Emily's heart continued to race, and the silence that enveloped them felt as heavy as lead. Every second stretched painfully long as they processed her words. She observed her parents closely, searching their faces for signs of understanding or rejection, yet their expressions remained inscrutable. An unyielding knot of anxiety formed in her stomach, and she felt as if her life's course hinged entirely on this moment. She drew in a deep breath, sensing that any faltering now could send her tumbling back into her own fears, enabling her parents' skepticism to override her convictions. It was a mental battle, each thought a volley between doubt and hope. Would they dismiss her as just a child yearning for validation, or recognize her as a burgeoning adult with a vision? "Emily," her father started, carefully selecting his words, "it's not that we don't care about Maria, but inviting her into our family event could blur the lines we have established." "Why do those lines even exist?" Emily shot back, the intensity of her voice surprising even her. She felt emboldened. The fury bubbling beneath the surface propelled her forward. "If you see her as just an employee, then how can we say we're truly grateful for what she does?" Her mother shifted uncomfortably, suddenly busying herself with the sauce simmering on the stove. Emily saw the familiar signals, the doubt, the hesitation, and above all, the refusal to confront uncharted territory in their tabooed family dynamic. But this time Emily stifled the instinct to yield and instead squared her shoulders, ready to challenge the status quo. "Mom, think about it," she continued, her voice steadier, laden with earnestness. "Maria has been part of our lives for years. We celebrate family as if there's no one else in the world that matters. But every story has characters. Are we going to keep pretending that she's not one of ours?" The heat in the kitchen was palpable, raising beads of sweat that drifted down her forehead. Emily shifted her gaze to Maria, who was quietly washing dishes at the sink. Maria glanced back, her expression a blend of curiosity and caution. It struck Emily then how much courage it must take for Maria to navigate the complexities of their lives. How often she might have to suppress her own feelings, bending under the weight of silent expectations. "Mom, Dad," Emily's voice wavered but remained firm. "How do you want our family's story to be remembered? As only our bubble, or as a tapestry of all the lives we touch?" Her father's brows furrowed, and Emily could almost see the mental gears grinding against his well-practiced mindset. He looked away, as if momentarily lost in thought. In that instant, Emily recognized the importance of planting the seed. The eagerness to nurture her own voice among their traditions was at the forefront now. Just when she thought she had struck a chord, her mother spoke, her tone a blend of distraction and affection. I don't want you to feel that you have to fight for people. It hasn't been that way, and it's not what we intended. Exactly. Emily interrupted, invigorated by a new realization. It's not about fighting. It's about inviting. We have the power to change the narrative. Maybe it's time we all consider new perspectives. Her heart soared within her chest, fueled by an urgency that transcended fear. What was unfolding before her eyes was more than just an invitation. It was a life lesson, a pivotal moment not just for Maria, but for herself too. With her eyes brightly shined by newfound purpose, she continued, I want to earn my evolution, to reclaim my story. We can be the ones who show that love is expansive. Can't we? Doubt flickered in her mother's gaze, but the practiced barriers began to shift. Emily clung to this burgeoning hope, her mind racing through the possibilities. As she waited for them to reply, anticipation prickled her skin. She could almost hear the echoes of her own potential, whispering promises of resolve on the horizon. Then her father's voice broke through the silence, soft but firm. What if we invited her, but also clarified boundaries? Could that work? Those words ignited a flicker of triumph in Emily's heart. The remnants of fear began to wither. This moment was not merely about inviting Maria, but about her own emergence as someone ready to navigate complexities beyond her years. Yet as relief washed over her, a new concern surged. Would this tentative bridge of understanding hold amidst a tide of resistance still lurking beneath their polished veneer? As she processed this thought, Emily resolved to face the fluidity of change head-on. She was ready, no longer simply a passive observer in her own life. But deep within, another challenge loomed, a confrontation with her own insecurities. The moment of true transformation was looming ever closer, and she had to wonder, would she navigate the uncharted waters of family acceptance, or would she find herself adrift without a lifeline? Emily couldn't shake the feeling that while her parents had partially acquiesced to her plea, the battle was far from over. The notion of inviting Maria felt like a tentative step, a band-aid on a larger wound that would need healing. The prospect of redefining their family dynamics was exhilarating yet terrifying, and the intensity of her emotions swirled in a dizzying vortex. She retreated to her room, closing the door behind her with a quiet determination. The safety of her sanctuary offered a moment of reprieve, but it also ignited the flames of introspection. Sitting cross-legged on her bed, she grasped her journal, a trusted companion where thoughts transmuted from chaotic observations into coherent reflections. As she wrote, the pen glided across the page, capturing not just her recounting of events but her evolving thoughts about identity and acceptance. What does it mean to belong? She penned. The question resonated, sparking inklings of deeper self-discovery. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering above the paper, contemplating whether she possessed the courage and clarity to explore the discomfort that loomed in her family's dynamics. The words began to flow again. Today I stood up for something I truly believe in, not just for Maria but for myself. I'm not a child anymore. I exist within the complex folds of our family narrative, a narrative waiting to expand. The realization struck her this wasn't just a standalone issue. It was part of her journey toward authenticity, each stroke of the pen unveiling layers of her aspirations and fears. Emily's heart raced again. But this time the fluttering didn't stem from anxiety, it was an awakening. She needed to be the architect of the narrative she wished to build alongside her family. Could she rally the strength to confront not just her parents' unwillingness to embrace change, but her own lingering insecurities? With newfound resolve, she planned her next steps. This battle wouldn't simply be about inviting Maria. It would involve confronting her parents' reluctance to expand their worldview. It would require crafting nuanced conversations that would address the unspoken barriers in their home, the cultural and emotional structures that dictated who occupied space within their family. As the shadows lengthened outside her window, a compelling thought crossed her mind. Her parents were creatures of habit, molded by patterns established long before she had a say in her environment. Confronting them would mean risking the profound comfort of familiarity, straining relationships that she cherished deeply. Balancing her familial love with the need for transformation would be tricky. Emily took a deep breath, the weight of expectation pressing against her chest. Could she navigate this complexity without losing herself in the process? She resolved to tread carefully yet purposefully, embracing the tension that followed her every intention. In the days that followed, A series of small but intentional interactions unfolded, each one a test of her evolving voice. She began introducing casual conversations about inclusion and belonging, letting those around her explore their own thoughts on the matter. Each exchange painted a vivid image of what could exist if walls between them were dismantled, little by little. Yet, a palpable discomfort lingered. Even as she saw glimmers of acknowledgement in her parents' responses, there remained a part of them that clung to the familiar, the comfortable. It stirred within her a growing frustration that threatened to spiral into doubt. Did they truly understand the depths of her convictions, or were they merely placating her with promises of exploration? And then one evening, as she sat with her parents over dinner, an unexpected question slipped out. What if I want to invite Maria to stay for dinner every week? The table fell silent. The words hung in the air as emotion simmered beneath the surface. Emily's mind raced. Her resolution was clear, but how far would she be willing to push? Would they embrace this new vision together, or would this lead her to yet another impasse, a precipice of disillusionment? Everything felt like a chess game now, each move strategically aimed at revealing the essential truths obscured by tradition. Emily braced herself for their response, caught in the precarious balance between hope and fear. The moment of truth loomed and the question remained. Would this actually be the spark igniting broader acceptance, or would it solidify her position as a voice yet unrecognized? As dinner plates clattered uncertainly around her, Emily's heart beat fiercely. She knew she could confront whichever response awaited her, but another part whispered a stark truth. The real test lay ahead. The quiet tension of the moment enveloped the dining room, a stifling layer of unspoken words wrapping around Emily. Her parents exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of surprise and contemplation. Emily's pulse quickened, caught in the web of anticipation she had spun. Would they embrace the possibility of Maria? Or would their response force her to retreat further into her doubts? Emily, her mother began, her tone cautious and probing. You know it's not that simple. The words dripped with the weight of history. Emily felt her heart sink momentarily. Yet in that instant, she sensed the opportunity to confront the very hesitation that had shaped their family landscape. Why not? She countered, her voice steadier than she felt. Maria is part of my life and I want her to be part of ours. Her father cleared his throat, the natural authority in his voice drawing everyone's attention. It's not merely about Maria, sweetheart. It's about how we adjust as a family. We've always had our ways, and inviting someone new, someone outside our norms, brings change that can be hard to navigate. It was a dismissal dressed as logic. Emily felt her frustration flare. Did they not see that change was the very essence of growth? She opened her mouth, realizing that the moment provided space for her to articulate not just her desires, but the deeper truths that lay behind them. But isn't that the point? Maria could teach us so much about acceptance. We could learn from each other, redefine what our family means, what it can be. The silence persisted, heavy and oppressive. Emily's mind raced, dissecting each fleeting expression on her parents' faces, their furrowed brows deepening like the lines of an uncharted map. She had to push further. What happens when we choose to keep everything the same even if we're unhappy? I'm not asking you to completely abandon your beliefs, but isn't it worth considering? Emily, her mother interjected, the softness in her voice trembling under the surface rebuke. This isn't about happiness. It's about stability. Stability. The word lingered in Emily's mind like a double-edged sword, one that cut deep and held back progress. If stability meant remaining stagnant, was it worth holding on to? She felt the tenacious grip of her convictions tighten around her heart. Courage sparked within her. Stability can feel like a cage, she said, letting her raw honesty pour out. I need you to understand that what I'm asking isn't just about inviting Maria to dinner. It's about embracing who I am, and who I want to become. It's taking a chance on love and growth, on what being a family truly means. Her heart thudded loudly, each beat keenly aware of the unrehearsed stakes. She didn't just want their acceptance. She craved understanding. The walls that had kept her family safe felt impossibly constricting, now a barrier she was determined to dismantle. Even as the tension hung thickly in the air, a flicker of something shifted within her parents. A moment of realization? Perhaps. Emily leaned into it, willing to continue navigating this complex dialogue. Her mother finally broke the stony silence. her voice softer, laced with apprehension. It's just, we fear what we don't know. You're right, change is hard. You can't just ask us to, her father began. But Emily shook her head, and they fell quiet once again. A glimmer of hope began to brush against her resolve, but Emily silently questioned whether it would be enough to shift their entrenched beliefs. She was carving out space for a new future, but how much would they be willing to sacrifice for her vision? As the tension simmered around them, the atmosphere shifted again. Emily felt an inkling that her words might not change everything overnight, but they could be the beginning of something profound. To build bridges where once were walls. Then, almost as if to punctuate the stirrings of change, her mother reached across the table, extending her hand. Let us talk more about this, she said, the weight of her intentions palpable in the air. Emily grasped her mother's hand, flicker of triumph sparking in her chest. Perhaps the transformation she sought wasn't as distant as she had feared. But the real question remained. What would be required of her in the days ahead as she fought for the family she envisioned? With uncertainty coiling in the pit of her stomach, she knew one thing for sure. The true battle for change was only just beginning. And with it, the answer she might find could redefine not only her family narrative, but her own identity in ways she could never have anticipated. As the days unfolded after that pivotal dinner, Emily felt a strange oscillation between hope and anxiety. Each morning began with a renewed sense of purpose, yet shadows of fear whispered their doubts in the corners of her mind. The tentative truth she witnessed had ignited a flame in her, one that pushed her to pursue conversations she had long avoided. She was ready to initiate a change, not just for herself but potentially for her family. After school each day, the idea of reaching out to Maria lingered like a bittersweet temptation. Emily knew she had to act instead of simply waiting for her parents to warm up to the idea. She decided to invite Maria to help her with a project for school, a subtle yet genuine way to integrate her into the life her family lived. That Saturday, as she prepared for Maria's arrival, Emily felt the familiar rush of anticipation churn within her. The vibrant colors of her art supplies sprawled across the table glistened under the morning sun, mirroring the colorful world she wanted to create. Each brushstroke represented her commitment to openness, an act of rebellion against the stasis she had felt for so long. When the doorbell echoed through the house, Emily's heart raced. She opened the door to find Maria standing there, an inquisitive smile gracing her face. "Hey, ready for some art?" The casual confidence Maria exuded reassured Emily, yet she was acutely aware that behind this straightforward encounter loomed the weight of her parents' scrutiny. Would this be another moment where walls went back up? Or could it be a chance for connection? As they settled into the creative chaos, Maria immediately brought her unique flair to the project. With a playful banter flowing naturally between them, Emily found herself laughing genuinely, a feeling she seemed to have forgotten in the rigidity of family gatherings. But as they painted, the warmth of camaraderie brought an underlying tension back to the surface. Could this joyful moment shatter when confronted by the reality of her family's apprehensions? "Your family is processing a lot," Maria ventured, a knowing look in her eyes. "Change isn't just about saying yes. It's about making space for new voices." Emily paused, the brush hovering above the canvas. Maria's insight pierced through, forcing her to contemplate the essence of the struggle she faced. It wasn't solely about her parents' acceptance. It was about challenging the very aspects of love and connection that defined family for them. What if they weren't ready? What if she defied their established paradigms only to discover that she had pushed too hard, too fast? A part of her wanted to retreat, to shield herself from the potential pain of rejection. But another part, a more profound part, understood that this was the moment to choose courage over fear. "I'm willing to help them see," she replied slowly, her voice firm. "It's not enough to hide behind uncertainty." A flicker of admiration crossed Maria's face. That's a brave mentality. Just remember, sometimes the loudest voices in the room aren't the ones that are ready to hear. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, shadows danced across the walls, echoing the complexity of Emily's thoughts. She felt invigorated and terrified, aware that they were wading into unknown territory. What would her parents think of her newfound determination? Would they recognize this change she sought not as a threat but as an evolution of their family unit? That night, while trying to sleep, Emily replayed Maria's words in her mind. The stakes felt ever so high, She was balancing on the cusp of change, with the weight of her family's expectations pressing against her desire to be authentic. It was a gauntlet she had to face. The following week, as Emily gathered the courage to introduce Maria as her friend to her parents, she felt the shiver of reluctance creep up her spine. Would her attempt at honesty be met with acceptance, or would she find herself drowning in resistance once more? With every fiber of her being, she knew the moment had come to face her greatest challenge yet. The confrontation with her parents about a future that could somehow intertwine their lives with Maria's in a meaningful way. The evening when Emily would address the elephant in the room was imminent, and with it, she sensed that her own journey would reach a defining moment, one that could either lock her into a life of sameness or propel her toward a destiny of authenticity and fulfillment. Emily stood at the threshold of her parents' living room, her heart pounding with an urgency she had never felt before. This was at the moment she would challenge the foundations of her upbringing and redefine what family could mean. No longer would she allow tradition to dictate the path she took. It was time to carve her own way alongside Maria. Gathering her resolve, Emily stepped forward and cleared her throat. Her parents were seated comfortably on the sofa, a shared glance of placid contentment on their faces that quickly shifted to curiosity at her sudden appearance. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" her mother replied, her expression a mix of maternal gentleness and caution. Taking a deep breath, Emily plunged in. "I want to talk about how we see Maria. It's important to me that she is included in our family, not just as our maid but as a person we cherish." A heavy silence enveloped the room. Her father furrowed his brow, surprise etched across his features. "Emily, we've covered this. Maria has her role and we need to respect it. It's how the world works. This isn't about roles. It's about humanity," Emily shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "We've treated her like she doesn't matter. But she is an essential part of our lives. Every day she contributes so much to our household, so much to us." "I know you feel strongly about this," her mother interjected softly, "but it challenges everything we've built. It puts our family in an awkward position." "What's awkward is ignoring the truth. If we truly believe in family values, we should extend that to everyone around us, including Maria," Emily replied, her voice trembling with conviction. The words felt liberating, like chains breaking. Her father leaned forward, the slightest hint of vulnerability slipping through his authoritative demeanor. "What do you expect from us? To suddenly invite her into all that we celebrate?" Emily straightened her back, fueled by a force she hadn't known she possessed. "Yes, I want Maria to celebrate with us at my birthday, at dinner. Every time we gather as a family. She deserves it. We all deserve it." The fire in her words echoed through the silent room. Her mother opened her mouth, the beginning of a protest rising, but Emily pressed on. "Look, I understand this is new and I know it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't change the truth of what we can build together." Her heart raced as she wielded her vulnerability like a weapon. After another pregnant pause, her father's gaze softened. "You're right about one thing, we do control how we view our connections." Emily noticed a faint crack in his armor, a shift in perception that she hoped could blossom into understanding. "You're passionate, and I admire that," her mother added, her demeanor shifting from defensive to contemplative. "But it would mean a lot of change. We've always kept our lives separate." Emily felt a surge of hope. "Change is how we grow. We can redefine what it means to be a family, to show acceptance and love, even outside our norms." As the conversation unfolded, Emily shared the story she had envisioned, invoking the image of Maria as a vital thread woven deep into their family tapestry. Each anecdote strengthened her argument, painted pictures of laughter and shared moments. She advocated for the beauty of unity across their differences, showcasing the very empathy she yearned to cultivate. Finally, her father sighed deeply, a visible weight lifting off his chest. "You're not just asking for Maria's recognition. You're challenging us to reconsider our viewpoints. And that's not easy." Emily nodded, recognizing the tentative acknowledgement in his voice. "Change won't happen overnight, but we can start by including Maria, wittingly show her respect that goes beyond duty." Her parents exchanged glances, an intricate dance of unspoken dialogue passing between them. Slowly, a sign of acquiescence emerged. Perhaps we can invite her for dinner next week, her mother proposed, a note of hesitance riding her words. Emily's heart soared. Yes, that would be incredible. Let us make it a true celebration. A family event where everyone gets to share what they love. As a smile broke across her mother's face, Emily felt an exhilarating rush of fulfillment wash over her. She was shaping her family's future, weaving Maria into their narrative, and forging a path of connection and acceptance that would redefine their existence. Later that evening, as she lay in her bed, Emily reflected on her journey. She had faced her fears, battled expectations, and laid the groundwork for something she once thought was impossible. The very realization of her growth pulsed through her, awakening a deep-seated sense of confidence. She was no longer the child simply navigating her family's legacy. She had emerged as a catalyst for profound change, a beacon of hope and compassion. In her heart, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. She had opened a door that could allow others to follow, shaping not just her family but the world around them. A wave of satisfaction flooded through her as she whispered to herself, "Every change is a step toward growth, and I'm proud to be part of that transformation." With the dawn of a new day ahead, Emily closed her eyes, knowing she had conquered a critical milestone, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. And so she stepped into the future armed with conviction, ready to rewrite the narrative of belonging and empathy, one day at a time. Now, if you found this transformative story inspiring, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread these powerful tales of individual achievement. Comment your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible journey. What do you think will come next? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Support the channel and let us keep this momentum going.